Okay, Judge Shepley, we're ready to get started.
Welcome to the swearing-in ceremony for the 2021 Lake Oswego City Council. I'm Municipal Judge Bruce Shepley. It is my honor this evening to administer the oath of office to the newly elected mayor and councilors. First will be Mayor-elect Joe Buck. Mr. Mayor-elect, if you would please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Joe Buck, do solemnly swear
I, Joe Buck, do solemnly swear
that I will support the constitutions and laws of the United States of America and the state of Oregon,
that I will support the constitutions and laws of the United States of America and the state of Oregon,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Lake Oswego.
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Lake Oswego.
I also solemnly swear
I also solemnly swear
I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself to the best of my ability
I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself to the best of my ability
in the office of mayor of the city of Lake Oswego,
in the office of mayor of the city of Lake Oswego,
to which I have been elected, so help me God.
to which I have been elected, so help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Judge. If I may say a few words.
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to address residents of Lake Oswego, my family, friends, colleagues, all of you who have supported and mentored me through the years. I thank you and welcome you all here tonight. Lake Oswego has always been a town of great opportunity, of great resource, a city that's been able to adapt to changing times. And for what it provided our Native American brothers and sisters who occupied this land from the start, to the industry that formed the Oswego settlement, to the beautiful residential and small business community we've become, our residents have been able to adapt to growth and challenges by working together, listening compassionately, and moving forward with a unified vision. Your input, your service, your voice shows that our city organization manifests the will, the creativity, and the values of our community. Your voice in our elections propels a future of hope, and your continued involvement is critical to ensure that the promise of a better tomorrow manifests itself in the daily lives of those in our community who most rely on a government responsive to their needs. In a time of growing disenfranchisement with our most trusted institutions, the neighborly connections between each one of us that fuel open communication, respect, and compassion are strengthening our community and exemplify the bedrock principle of government by the people. While we as your elected officials will provide leadership, it is all of us together that provide action. The future ahead will be defined by open doors, connections to one another, building greater empathy, and new voices, which all lead to a city more accessible to the diversity of folks living here. First and foremost, we are Oswegans, and our past has shown us there's nothing we cannot accomplish together, and current events illustrate our resilience to adversity. As we extend our arms, open our minds and our hearts, we'll build a city whose beauty and true value is best characterized by the wide variety of people living in it, making it the place that we love. The city we plan for today is the future of our youth. And may we be the best stewards of both a natural environment and social fabric that honor the community they will undoubtedly be proud to call home. I look forward to working with each one of you and my new colleagues on the City Council, plus our talented team in all departments of the city. And thank you all for giving me this honor to serve my hometown, the great city of Lake Oswego. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Councilor-elect Masin Mubap. If you would please raise your right hand, Mr. Councilor-elect, and repeat after me. I, Masin Mubap, do solemnly swear that I will support the constitutions and laws. Okay, let's start again now that we've got you. I, Masin Mubap, do solemnly swear
I, Masen Moop, do solemnly swear
that I will support the constitutions and laws of the United States of America and the state of Oregon,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Oregon
and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Lake Oswego.
and the Charter and the
Ordinances.
of the City of Lake Oswego.
I also solemnly swear
I also solemnly swear
I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself to the best of my ability
I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself to the best of my ability
in the office of City Councilor of the City of Lake Oswego,
in the office of the Councilor of the City of Lake Oswego,
to which I have been elected, so help me God.
which I have been elected, so help me God.
Congratulations. Next will be Councilor-elect Rachel Verdick.
I,
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Councilor. Go ahead.
Joe, I think Mayor Joe already said everything. I think I'm very grateful to be here today, and I'm honored also to be here. I'm thanking all the people of Lake Oswego, those who voted for me and those who did not. As I swear, I will serve this city, and I want to leave it better than I found it when I finished my term as a councilor. I'm very honored, and I know that it's a historic day, and I think Lake Oswego understood when they were voting for me the words of the Honorable Dr. King, who said to judge people not by the color of their eyes, but by their character. And I think they did. As being the first Black person serving here, it's an honor, but also it's a humbling that I have this. I owe it to all the many thousand born, those who were here fighting for civil rights, those who were here and continue to fight, like people like Willie Poinsett and all those folks in Lake Oswego for love and respond to racism. I'm thanking them. I also thank my campaign. I thank people of the Lake Oswego Review who supported me, of the Chamber of Commerce, and all the folks. And I'm very proud to work with all these ladies and gentlemen of the council that I know, and I know their great work. I know also the great work of our city manager and all the employees. I'm proud to be part of this thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Next will be Councilor-elect Rachel Verdick. Councilor-elect Verdick, if you would please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Rachel Verdick, do solemnly swear
I, Rachel Verdick, do solemnly swear
that I will support the constitutions and laws of the United States of America and the state of Oregon,
that I will support the constitutions and laws of the United States of America and the state of Oregon,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Lake Oswego.
and the charter and the ordinances of the city of Lake Oswego.
I also solemnly swear
I also solemnly swear
I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself to the best of my ability
that I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself to the best of my ability
in the office of City Councilor of the City of Lake Oswego,
in the office of City Councilor in the city of Lake Oswego,
to which I have been elected, so help me God.
to which I have been elected, so help me God.
Congratulations, Councilor.
Thank you. And I don't know that I can top Joe and Miss Sen, but I would like to thank my family and friends for all their support, not only during the campaign, but throughout my life. And I'd also like to do a shout out to Leslie Ruminski and Joan Moore, because they taught me so much through this campaign and really helped to guide me and remind me to stick to my beliefs and to support the city and listen to our citizens, which leads me to thank all those citizens who took time out of their schedules to meet with me and share with me and include me in their thoughts and help educate me in a lot of instances. So I really thank all of them, and I look forward to continuing our conversations as well as meeting more of our citizens and hearing from them. And I'd also like to thank our outgoing city councilors, Lamont, Kohlhoff, and O'Neill, as well as our outgoing mayor, Studebaker. You have left our city in a better place, and you also gave me time and guidance, and I really genuinely appreciate everything that you've done for me personally as well as our city. So thank you. We have big shoes to fill. And with that, I'm just extremely humbled and honored to have been elected to the City Council of Lake Oswego. I have served the city in many capacities, but this just is fabulous, and I'm super excited. And I'm going to do my best to work with integrity, transparency, and curiosity to serve the city to the absolute best of my ability. And I'm absolutely thrilled to be working with Mayor Buck, the rest of the city councilor, as well as our city manager, Bennett, and the city staff. It is truly an exceptional group of people, and we have the opportunity to be an exceptional team. So with that said, I am very excited, and let's get to work.
Thank you. Next will be Councilor-elect Aaron Raps. Councilor-elect, if you would please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Aaron Raps, do solemnly swear.
I, Aaron Rapp, do solemnly swear.
I will support the constitutions and laws of the United States of America and the state of Oregon,
Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States of America and the state of Oregon,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Lake Oswego.
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Lake Oswego.
I also solemnly swear
I also solemnly swear
I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself to the best of my ability
I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself to the best of my ability
in the office of City Councilor of the City of Lake Oswego,
in the office of City Councilor of the city of Lake Oswego,
to which I have been elected, so help me God.
to which I've been elected, so help me God.
Congratulations, Councilor.
Thank you very much, Judge Shepley. I don't want to spend a lot of time. I'm a man of few words, but I just want to say a couple thank yous. First and foremost, to my wife and children for their support, encouragement, and love. They really deserve all the credit, not me. I'd like to thank Shelby Campion, Elaine Franklin, and Kate Furman for running an incredibly organized, successful, and more importantly, a respectful campaign. I'd like to thank all those who donated to my campaign, who supported and voted for the vision that I had for Lake Oswego. I want to thank them. I'd like to send a very big thank you to Kent, Teresa, Skip, and John for their friendship, counsel, laughs, and leadership. They have set the bar incredibly high for all of us. The Lake Oswego streets that we all enjoy today are such only by their steadfast work and love. We should all strive to serve and lead our city as they did. Lake Oswego is in their debt. Finally, John, Jackie, Daniel, Masen, Rachel, Joe, we will not always agree, but I will say this: we will bring out the best in each other, because when we are at our best, the Lake Oswego community will be served at the highest level. That is why we were put here. That is our ultimate purpose. Each of us must serve at our best. I look forward to working with each of you and seeing our friendships blossom. So let's do this.
Thank you, Councilor. Please welcome the newly elected members of the Lake Oswego City Council.
I'm going to prep Julia.
Thank you very much, Judge. It's good to have you here. We appreciate it. And with that, I will call this January 5th, 2021 meeting of the Lake Oswego City Council to order. Ms. Linder, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Mayor Buck,
Here.
Councilors Rapp,
Here,
Mbu, Mans,
Here.
Wynn,
Here.
Wenlin,
Here.
and Verdict.
Here.
Here, thank you very much. And now if everyone would please join me in saying the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
United
America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now our first order of business this evening is the election of the council president. And with that, I would like to nominate Councillor Nguyen to serve as the 2021 council president.
I will second that.
Second, Councillor Mans. Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, and seeing none, Ms. Linder, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Mayor Buck,
Yes?
Councilors Rapp,
yes,
Mbu,
Yes.
Mans,
Yes.
Wynn,
Yes, yes.
Wenlin,
Yes.
and Verdict.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Councillor Nguyen. All right. Our next, and thank you, Councillor Mans, for your service this past year as council president. Our next order of business is a proclamation for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And with that, I'll read the proclamation. Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. championed economic and social justice, international peace, and embodied our fundamental right to seek change in our communities through a collective voice. He taught us that, quote, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of convenience and comfort, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. His unwavering pursuit of peace and justice resulted in great civil progress made over decades. This sacrifice and commitment to progress unites us all to follow in Dr. King's footsteps as warriors for change in our own communities. On the heels of a year of great civil unrest, including in our own city, folks stood on the shoulders of Dr. King as they made their voices heard and cast light on the darkness of injustice, hate, and intolerance that remains. We remember the example he set decades ago to recognize the common humanity of all people. May his enduring memory inspire the continued work of advancing equality, social justice, and opportunity for all. Work to continue to lift the oppressed from poverty, to seek peace in countries and communities torn by violence and war, and to end racism and class discrimination that inhibits fair and equal access to opportunity. As we take actions as a city council, we shall remember what Dr. King sacrificed to ensure the promise of a more just future. We will draw on lessons teaching that courage and action now will lead to a better day tomorrow. The messages of Dr. King ring through now, just as they did 50 years ago. With cries so old, we often forget to see them not as newfound notions, but rather as a persistent echo of resilient and courageous leadership. Dr. King reminded us that, quote, everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. May his strength live in each one of us, his message inspire new generations of leaders, and his legacy instill service to others. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Lake Oswego City Council, proclaim January 18th, 2021 as Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and we call upon the people of the city of Lake Oswego to join their fellow citizens across the United States in observing this day with civic, community, and service programs in honor of his life and lasting legacy. Thank you. And Next, I'd like to welcome Nancy Nyland, who is here with a presentation on the 2021 LO Reads program. Ms. Nyland, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to present to you tonight. I am Nancy Nyland, the volunteer and special events coordinator for the Lake Oswego Library. We are very excited about the 15th annual citywide community reading program, Lake Oswego Reads CAST, the origins of our discontents. Thanks to the Friends of the Library, 800 complimentary copies of CAST will be distributed to library card holders on Thursday, January 7th at the library. In keeping with COVID protocols, patrons will drive through to receive their book, events brochure, and a Lake Oswego Reads logo cloth face covering. And in keeping with this virtual programming, I'm going to attempt to share my screen. There we go. The library is thrilled that despite many competing interests, Pulitzer Prize winning author Isabel Wilkerson will be presenting via Zoom on Tuesday, February 23rd. As with all of our virtual presentations, pre-registration will be required. The Lake Oswego Reads 2021 program is presented by Lake Oswego Library and sponsored generously by the Friends of Lake Oswego Library, the Lake Oswego Review, the Lake Oswego Rotary Club, and Lakewood Center for the Arts. There we go. We hope you'll join us for at least one of the Lake Oswego Reads events. There's 16 in the month of February. For more detailed information, you can visit us at lakeoswegoreads.org. This is the front of the brochure. You can see our sponsors featured there. Some highlights of the month are...
And excuse me, Nancy, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm not able to see the screen share.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, thank you. We're all supporting you in doing the screen sharing thing.
I wish I was there with everyone in person. It'd be so much easier, but can you see it now? Excellent, thank you. Okay, so here we have the cover of the beautiful brochure. And I was gonna let you know that some of the key events are the LO Reads Virtual Art Show, which features local artists and their individual interpretations of the book. We have incorporated CAST also into the library's most popular virtual event, which happens weekly at the library. It's called Pub Trivia Night. So 1 week in February, we'll focus on elements of CAST on Thursday, February 25th. This weekly program, last week, we had 92 people participate in Pub Trivia. And so we're really delighted that Lake Oswego Reads can be included in February. We've also invited local youth to read the book and submit art pieces in any medium for inclusion on our LO Reads website, as well in giving back to local businesses that have been so generous to us in the past. We have implemented Tuesdays to Go to highlight local restaurants who offer curbside pickup. We call it Feed the Mind and Nourish the Soul. And speaking of nourishing the soul, we are featuring our very own new city councilor, Messine Maboop, as he will teach us to cook his favorite Senegalese chicken and rice dish. I can't wait for this. This is the whole month calendar of events right there. Okay. As always, we could not produce this community program without the support of the city staff and council. And I'm, of course, extremely thankful to library staff, the steering and events committee, library volunteers, and my incredibly supportive library director, Melissa Kelly. Thank you for giving me the time to share details about Lake Oswego Reads, and I'm happy to answer any questions right now.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nyland. I strenuously object, though, to you bringing up Counselor Mboop's cooking at 6 p.m. I sit here starving and now having to make it through the rest of this meeting. Where can the community find that list of events that you went through?
Okay, so we have our own website, lakeoswegoreads.org. The entire brochure will be live there on Thursday. Everyone who comes to the library will receive, with their free book, one of the copies of the brochure. It will also be in February 13th's Lake Oswego Review and Monthly Magazine. So that's circulated to everyone in the city. So it should be readily available, and I'll have it as well at the library.
Yeah, if folks can't make it to the library first thing at 10 a.m., will there be some books later in the day?
I hope so, but
first come, first serve.
I guarantee, yes. First come, first serve. We are really working hard to make it as safe as possible. So starting at 10 a.m., we'll have a serpentine through the parking lot and have lots of volunteers helping facilitate a really quick transaction. And then once it gets dark, we'll be moving to curbside pickup.
Great. Does anyone else have any questions for Ms. Nyland? Okay, no.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Great to have you here. And Ms. Kelly, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks.
Okay. Ms. Linder, time for a public comment. Has anyone asked to provide public comment this evening?
No, Mayor, there have been no requests.
Okay. Thank you very much. And we'll move into our first public hearing. We have Ordinance 2856, which is amending Chapter 50 of the Lake Oswego Code to exempt awnings and canopies over outdoor dining areas from design review during COVID-19 and replace the 14-day restriction on temporary shelters with a longer time frame for certain commercial uses during COVID-19. And I will ask, please, that Mr. Boone review the legislative hearing procedure with us. Mr. Boone? Oh, you're muted, Mr.
Unmute. Gotcha. Thank you. Sorry about that. This is a legislative decision, which is generally a policy decision within the discretion of the City Council. Although a legislative decision may be discretionary, it must also comply with applicable state law, as well as any applicable statewide planning goal or administrative rule adopted pursuant to ORS Chapter 197. A legislative amendment to the Development Code, Zoning Code, and Development Standards must also comply with the applicable provisions of Lake Oswego Comprehensive Plan. Public hearing process will begin with a presentation by staff, then testimony will be received from the public. Individuals will be allowed up to 5 minutes. Recognized neighborhood associations, homeowner associations, government or government agencies, or other incorporated public interest organizations will be allowed up to 10 minutes. Time limits do not include time taken by questions from the council or responses to such questions. Any person in attendance may cede his or her time for testimony to another person, but in no case shall any person's testimony be increased to greater than 10 minutes. At this point, I would ask any counselors that need to declare a financial conflict of interest, please do so now. Seeing none to declare, the staff report by Scott Siegel, Director of Planning and Building Services.
Thank you, Mr. Boone. Good evening, Mayor Buck and members of the City Council. So nice to see you. I hope you're doing well. This evening's public hearing is on proposed code amendments. As Mr. Boone described, these are changes to the Community Development Code. So they go through the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is charged with reviewing legislative land use proposals and making a recommendation to City Council. So that's the process that we followed. Just backing up a bit, in October, the then City Council directed staff to prepare these code amendments and to bring them to the Planning Commission. This is part of our ongoing efforts to assist local businesses through the pandemic. We have actually de-emphasized enforcement of temporary shelters for the past several months, as the council had expressed an interest in pursuing these code changes and in fact directed staff to bring them forward. So we've been working as diligently as we can in partnership with the business community to try to identify obstacles that folks are encountering and to do our best to try to remove those in a responsible way while looking after public health and safety. So this code change does really two things. One, it would extend the time frame during which businesses are allowed to have temporary shelters up. So these are tents. These are the types of shelters that you would typically see during a special event, like the auto show or the arts festival, that sort of thing. And the code currently limits these types of shelters to 14 days because typically they're not the types of structures that we want to see up on a permanent basis, as you can imagine. However, these are extraordinary times, as you know, and there is demand primarily because of the Oregon Health Authority restrictions on businesses, restaurants, and other personal service businesses that limit the capacity of their space and really have forced restaurants in particular, but other businesses as well, to spread out and requiring more space simply to operate and stay open. So the first component of this proposal would extend the time frame for temporary shelters from 14 days to actually through the end of May, which is generally the time frame when we're more likely to have inclement weather and when people would need the shelters outside. There are provisions in the code change to ensure that public health and safety is addressed, and our fire marshal Herr Zudenteich is in the meeting with us this evening. If you have any questions for him, the fire department does have a permit process already set up. In fact, this was something that existed prior to COVID for special events, and it's a process for business owners. They simply contact the fire department and discuss their plans. There's some standards or some guidelines actually for ensuring compliance with the fire code. And our staff is very business, customer friendly and works through that with them. If the tent is along a public right-of-way, a street frontage or a sidewalk, they will also work with the engineering department to ensure that ADA accessibility and other public safety measures are addressed along our public ways. So we do have a process in place for that. The second component of this code change is more for permanent structures, and it's fairly narrow in scope, and it's for restaurants who are wanting to construct an awning, which is actually a permanent addition to a building or a permanent structure that's erected over a dining area, over an outdoor seating area. It provides a streamlined permit process for that. Ordinarily, or under current code, awnings would go through design review. It's a land use process. There's public notice. It takes several months. It can, in fact, if there's an appeal, which is not, it's uncommon that something like that would be appealed, but if that were to happen, the process could extend out over several months. So with direction from the prior council, we drafted the code amendment to basically exempt awnings that were limited in size. So the code amendment specifies that they cannot exceed more than 1/3 of the building face along the street. So they're limited in scope. And they also must be set back from adjacent residential properties, and there are standards for that. There's some other provisions for lighting to ensure that any outdoor lighting is shielded, directed downward, and is not going to impact neighbors, as well as fire code and other building code requirements there. So in essence, that is what is proposed. The Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on the ordinance in November and has recommended approval. And this is before you this evening for any public testimony and ultimately your decision. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Siegel. Well, I have a question. What is the, is there a minimum square footage that before these code amendments was required to seek city approval for permanent awning?
For a permanent awning, well, there are building code requirements that apply above, I think it's 160 square feet for commercial space. If it's attached to the building, it would be best to check with the building department in terms of, identifying any permit requirements. Well, generally, it's best to check. We're happy to answer any questions.
Councilor Nguyen.
Thank you, Director Siegel. Question I had was, you had mentioned in terms of the temporary structures, and so this is allowing temporary structures to continue through the end of May. In the ordinance, is there any provision for us to extend that? Reason why I ask is I'm thinking, as Oregonians, we know that the set doesn't automatically come out on June 1st and stay with us through the entire summer. That said, who knows if restaurants will be allowed to return to 100% of their indoor dining capacity. So in addition, in a way to provide some assistance to small businesses to be able to weather this pandemic, are there provisions in the ordinance that would allow maybe an extension of that to help small businesses that continue to face reduce dining room space and those implications they have because of that? Is there any of that built in?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Nguyen. The proposal for extending the time frame for temporary structures such as tents, it would apply during, I felt a little uncomfortable actually even putting this language in there, because we certainly hope that the pandemic will not extend into 2022, but there is a provision that would allow for for this to reoccur, for the tents to be erected again during those months from October through May of 2022, for example, if the need were there, if the restrictions were in place by the state. But beyond May, as the ordinance is currently drafted, the tents would have to come down at that point, or they could be, reinstalled and kept up for 14 days at a time during the summer. So if the council were, wanting to adjust that time frame, certainly within your purview to do that. And but that's what is proposed through the end of May.
Thank you.
Councilor Rapp.
Yeah, sorry. You may have already said this, but I may have missed it. So let's go to the more optimistic side, which is this ordinance goes through May, and optimistically, businesses are able to open up to 100% capacity before then. What protection, maybe that's not the right word, but are we able to, because we don't want awnings out permanently, right? So if optimistically things are opening up back up, are we able to make sure those awnings come down if businesses are back up to 100% capacity before May?
Yeah, the allowance is through May, and if the restrictions were lifted, I think City Manager Bennett may have more information on this, but our sense is that they're not going to be lifted uniformly for all types of businesses all at once. It's likely that they'll be adjusted incrementally. The capacity may be increased for example, for athletic clubs or gyms, sooner than it is for restaurants, or it could be the other way around. And so in any event, if the Oregon Health Authority were to lift the restrictions for all businesses all at once, and that were to happen, in March, I think we'd still want to afford some, time frame for the businesses to take the tents down. And, it feels like a month or two would be a reasonable time frame in which to do that. But I, defer to others on that.
And the way this is crafted, it's anytime that the restaurants are facing state mandated restrictions in terms of the number of people they could seat. So in the unlikely event that there are no statewide restrictions before May 31st of this year, we could come visit with you. I do think that we're very hopeful that there aren't any May 31st of 2022, but I suspect we'll still have some level of restriction until a sufficient number of Oregonians are vaccinated.
Right, and yeah, I don't think there's anyone that loves these tents. So the sooner we can move beyond the tent, I think the better for everyone. And fortunately, they are, they go up easily and they come down easily. And so no one's incurring a great, unlike a permanent awning where you're making a larger investment. I mean, these are, and no one's making a large upfront investment that kind of pay as you go, if you will. So that's good. Okay. Councillor Mans.
Yes, I have a question about the mechanism. Highly unlikely though it may be that we will get complaints from the citizenry or from other businesses that social distancing is not in compliance within these areas, or whatever the case may be. Would that be things that we as counselors, should we get email direct to the city manager, or?
So just to remind you that we don't actually, our approach to enforcement of the state's regulations for restrictions inside private property is that we'll first approach the business and let them know that there's been a complaint, make sure that they're aware of what the restrictions are. But ultimately, enforcement responsibility for business owners rests in the hands of the state of Oregon. So OLCC, OSHA, those are the agencies that are doing the more strict enforcement. So if you receive a complaint, we need to let folks know that we are happy to reach out and educate folks. But if they believe a business owner is willingly in violation, then they need to report the business to the state of Oregon.
A good reminder to all of us. Thank you, City Manager.
Councillor Winland.
So, Director Siegel, is there for a business that wants to pursue more of a permanent structure, what's the time frame on that? So just so that if people are watching tonight, you get to go ahead with the temporary structure, but if you're wanting to invest and put in something on a more permanent structure, what's the time frame and the process that we would have to, the business would have to go through?
Yeah, Councillor Wendland, I'm assuming that the question is about constructing something on private property and it's not in the public right of way, which simplifies things. There are three options or three possibilities, I think. One would be that they're constructing an awning that would be subject to or would be allowed through this exception that is proposed. There would not be design review or land use review required. It would simply be a building permit review. And structural plan reviews for commercial projects can be turned around within a matter of a couple of weeks. Sometimes, if the plans are really in order. And the second level would be that the business has or would like to purchase a seasonal enclosure, so a higher level of design, a higher level of finishing, a structure that they can put up and then take down seasonally, not for purposes of the pandemic, but just to extend their outdoor dining area during the colder, wetter months. And the code provides for that. There is a process. It is a land use review, but it's a narrower scope than the more conventional design review. And the council last year adopted code changes to help facilitate that. So that's another possibility. The time frame on that it is a land use process, so it would likely take 2 or 3 months potentially from coming in the door for a pre-app to having a staff decision on that. And then the third possibility would be none of the above, want to do more or want to do something different than what those two other options will allow, and that would involve a more extensive design review. It may require variances, and that's into more of the 4 to 6 month time frame, depending on the complexity of the project.
Councilor Rapp.
If there's no public testimony or any more questions, I move to tentatively approve Ordinance 2856.
Evan, do they need to at least open and close a public hearing?
Well, yes, we need to find out if there's any public testimony.
That's why I asked.
Right, okay.
There have been no requests to testify.
All All right, you can open the public hearing. Nobody wishes to testify. Close the public hearing and proceed to deliberation.
Okay, public hearing is closed. Would someone like to make a motion? Councilor Rapp?
I make the motion to tentatively approve ordinance 2856.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded to approve tentatively ordinance 2856. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, let's move to a vote. Ms. Linder, please call the roll.
Mayor Buck,
Yes?
Councilors Rapp,
Yes.
Mbu, Mans,
Yes.
Nguyen,
Yes.
Wendland,
Yes.
and Verdict.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, this vote was a preliminary decision concerning the request, and the final decision will be made upon adoption of written findings and an ordinance on January 19 at 3 p.m. Is that correct for the second meeting?
Yes. Great. Okay. Thank you so much. And I know, Mr. Siegel, you are not going anywhere so quickly. We're going to move on to Ordinance 2862, another public hearing, amending LOC Chapter 47 to modify temporary sign restrictions for businesses during COVID-19 restrictions. Mr. Boone, will you please again review the legislative hearing procedure?
Certainly. This again is a legislative decision. The public hearing process will begin with a presentation by staff, and then testimony will be received from the public. Again, individuals allowed up to 5 minutes. Groups and other incorporated organizations will be allowed up to 10 minutes, along with neighborhood associations. These time limits do not include time spent taken from questions by the council or responses to those questions. Any person may cede their testimony to another person, but in no case shall more than 10 minutes be allowed. I would ask now if the councilors have any financial conflicts of interest to declare. Seeing none, then again, Director Siegel with the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Boone. Mayor, members of the City Council, Ordinance 2862 would amend the sign code to allow temporary signs on an extended basis during COVID restrictions. It would also allow portable A-frame signs for businesses during the same time frame. And portable A-frame signs are not something that the code currently allows beyond I guess, realtor signs, and we don't regulate the content of the signs, but there's fairly narrow allowance for portable signs. One exception is for the Boones Ferry Road project, the city adopted a policy and a code that allows businesses along Boones Ferry Road to use portable A-frame signs during the construction project. And we felt that that was important because as the road was torn up, visibility and access into businesses was, a bit of a challenge. And as it turns out, that flexibility, I think, has served the businesses well. We haven't received any complaints about, public safety that I'm aware of. And in addition to the city's the construction project signs that are out there, people are able to get in and out of businesses. During COVID, however, we have a different set of challenges. Businesses that have reopened, and since they've reopened, we've tried to be flexible in allowing temporary signs in order to provide wayfinding for customers, as businesses have had to change their operations to do more pickup or drop off or drive up and receive goods. Having some directional signage or at least some business identification close to the street has been really essential for some of the businesses. And I think from our experience with the Boones Ferry Road project and over the past 10 months, as we've tried to be flexible and really just not enforcing the temporary signs until the election was over, we haven't seen any negative impacts really to speak of from this. There are some controls that are recommended as part of the ordinance that are outlined in the proposal that address the size and the placement of the signs, public safety, accessibility along sidewalks, traffic concerns, distance from building entries and not having the signs anchored to trees as examples of some of those requirements. The temporary signs would be allowed, or the A-frame signs, excuse me, would be allowed during COVID restrictions. So after COVID restrictions are lifted, businesses would no longer be allowed to use these signs. And that is what is proposed. This did not go before the Planning Commission because the sign code is not a land use regulation. So that's really the only distinction in the process between the two ordinances that you've received for this evening. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Siegel. Councilor Wendland?
So these are business signs. Does this have anything to do with temporary restrictions on signs that I still see political signs, I still see signs that are out? What kind of sign can you put out? And I know there's specific requirements, and how does this integrate into that?
Yeah, so these would be, we don't regulate the content of the signs, so it's really about location, sort of time, place, and manner, or design, and location of the signs. And so these temporary signs are limited to businesses, so they would be limited to commercial zones or zones in which businesses are allowed one sign per business. So that's how we're kind of containing that. So for example, this would not extend to residences. So political signs or campaign signs that are still up, those are subject to the temporary sign requirements that are in the code that relate to the time frame after an election. I think it's within 5 days after the election, those signs are supposed to be removed. So does that answer your question, Councilor Wendland?
Okay, I don't see any other questions, so why don't we open up the hearing? Ms. Leonard, do we have anyone to testify?
No, there have been no requests to testify.
We'll close that hearing right up. Would anyone like to make a motion? Councilor Wu?
Yes, I make a motion to move to enact the ordinance.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Wen, you have your hand up. You good? Okay. Okay, Ms. Linder, please call the roll.
Mayor Buck,
Yes.
Councilors Rapp,
Yes.
Mbu, Mance,
Yes.
Nguyen,
Yes.
Wendland,
Yes.
and verdict.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Siegel. All right. Moving right along. Next, we have two properties, annexation to annex. We have Ordinance 2857, annexing properties at 5350 Southwest Firwood Road and 16115 Bonaire Avenue, along with a portion of the public right-of-way. Mr. Boone, will you please review the quasi-judicial hearing procedure with us?
Thank you, and it is quasi-judicial, so there's a little bit more to say. The land use request involves the application of the criteria and standards which are listed in the staff report, which are available online. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable criteria as listed in the staff report or such other criteria contained within the Lake Oswego Comprehensive Plan and land use regulations which you believe apply to this decision. Please identify to the council the criteria or standards you're addressing so the council may consider your testimony in relation to the applicable criteria or standards. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. The failure of the applicant to raise any constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the city council to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. The public hearing process is, first will be presentation by staff, then testimony by the applicant up to 20 minutes, then testimony by others, Typically, those in support, those opposed, and then neither for nor against. Individuals be allowed up to 5 minutes. Groups and neighborhood associations will be allowed up to 10 minutes. Following that would be the applicant's rebuttal up to 5 minutes. Those times do not include time spent responding to questions from the City Council. Any person in attendance may cede his or her time for testimony to another person, but in no case shall any person's testimony be increased greater than 10 minutes. Prior to closing the public hearing, a party who testifies before the City Council may request an opportunity to present additional evidence. If a party so requests, either the public hearing will be continued to a date certain, not less than 7 days later, or the record shall remain open for at least 7 days after the hearing to enable the party to submit additional written evidence or testimony. At this point, I would ask the council members to please declare if you have any ex parte contacts, including a site visit, if you have any bias on the application and financial conflicts of interest. So with that, Mayor Buck, if you go ahead and declare whether you have any ex parte contacts, site visit, bias, or financial conflicts of interest, and then poll the council.
None.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
Next.
Would you like me to pull the rest of the council?
Yes, because they're not in the same order that you have, so go right ahead.
Oh, I see. Councilor Burdick, anything to declare?
No.
Yeah, thank you. Councilor Mans?
No.
Councilor Windland?
No.
Councilor Nguyen?
No.
Councilor Boop?
No.
Councilor Rapp?
Nope.
Thank you,
All
everyone.
right. Is there any challenge to a city council member's right to consider the application? Hearing none, then I believe Associate Planner Paul Espy with the staff report.
Thank you, Attorney Boone. Mayor Buck, members of the council, my name is Paul Espy. I'm an associate planner for the Long Range Planning Department for the city of Lake Oswego. We have before us this evening two properties, 5350 Firwood Road and 16115 Bonaire Avenue, that are being reviewed as a public hearing under one ordinance and of course, two separate properties. These properties are proposing to annex, under two separate properties. And then 5110 Carman Drive and 19064 Benfield Avenue are proposing to annex under the expedited process. And the Metro Code allows jurisdictions to establish an expedited process for uncontested minor boundary changes on properties where the annexation may be contested, such as those annexing right away beyond the property boundary or involving sensitive lands or larger developable annexation territories. And those would be reviewed through the standard review public hearing process. And then I might add that none of these annexations have been contested as of today's date. This process allows for a shorter notification period and production of a staff report in 7 days prior to the decision date instead of the standard 15 days, and eliminates the need for a formal public hearing. The expedited process may only be used where, of course, a petition initiating the minor boundary change is accompanied by written consent of 100% of the property owners and at least 50% of the electors that are currently living on the property. Expedited annexations are usually placed on the city council's consent agenda, but this evening, I think in our case, it's under council business, and we will get to those after a while. We do notice these to necessary and interested parties at least 20 days prior to the decision date, but we do not send out a notice to the radius of 100 feet around the property, as is allowed per the standard annexation process. We generally, the necessary parties do usually include city council, city, county, cities, the district whose jurisdictional boundary or adopted urban services include, or who provides any kind of urban services to the area, and then Metro or any other local or regional governmental unit. Okay, so without any further, this is the public hearing, and the proposed annexations on Firwood and Bonaire Avenue are owner initiated and will result in the addition of approximately 0.81 acres of residential land, 0.38 acres of residential land at 5350 Firwood Road, and 0.43 acres at 16115 Bonaire Avenue. And then we're also annexing approximately 254 feet of Bonaire Avenue right-of-way, as indicated in the red area on the map there. Properties are designated R7.5 in the comprehensive plan and will be designated R7.5 single family upon annexation. Sanitary sewer service can be made available from an existing 8-inch sewer line in Bonaire Avenue. It's located approximately 210 feet north of 5350 Firwood and approximately 100 feet north of 16115 Bonaire Avenue. And as you can see, it is depicted, the terminus or the manhole there is depicted as a blue hexagon in the middle of the roadway there. Properties are also served by the Lake Grove Water District, and they are served by a main located in Bonaire Avenue. These properties will also remain a Lake Grove Water District customer after annexation. And we find, or staff finds, that these properties are within the urban services boundary, and future sewer has been anticipated and planned for the city's sewers master plan. And also future roadway improvements will be prioritized and funded in the city's pavement management inventory and will be considered in conjunction with other streets throughout the city in the future. Staff finds that the annexation is timely with regards to public facilities and recommends approval. And I am open for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Espy. Are these two properties on the same, under the same, I noticed they both have different owners and applicants. Are they somehow related to one another, or is this just for?
No, they applied separately and they are both under separate ownership, but because they are so close together, we were able to annex them together under one ordinance.
Oh, okay, well, thank you. Councilor Windland?
Do we have our policy when obviously they're going to hook up to the sewer and pay for it themselves? Is that correct?
That is correct. They are required to fund the extension and ultimate connection of the sewer to the properties.
We also require them to put the street back in as good or better shape. I've noticed many times in walking through the streets of Lake Oswego, when somebody puts a new pipe in, they do a partially good job of putting a new surface on, but then after a couple months, it's deteriorated. And so I don't know, what is our standard on things like that? Because it's a county road still, right?
It is, and it would be improved in accordance with county standards with the portion where the road exists within the county. But this road will be adopted. Well, this road will be annexed into the city, but will still be under Clackamas County's jurisdiction for maintenance. And so the road opening permit, I believe, would need to be obtained through Clackamas County. And in some cases, they will require them to repave the entire thing, depending upon the condition of the roadway. I recall a situation over on Timber Grove Court where they required the people who are connecting sewer there to almost reconstruct the entire roadway. I'm not sure what they would do in this case.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Espy, why is maintenance not being transferred to the city for this portion?
It will be eventually, but it's done under a separate process. And what engineering likes to do is gather or sequester several street sections and bring them in all at one time.
I see, because sometimes we do transfer, correct?
That's correct, but usually it's never done with the annexation. Only the roadway is mapped into the city, but the county maintenance jurisdiction is done under a separate process between Clackamas County and the city of Lake Oswego.
Great.
I guess I would just add that you've got a county road here, so it's until the county surrenders its jurisdiction, even though we're annexing, it remains the county road. We do have an agreement with Clackamas County as to when we will take county roads. But we don't want to take, a little bit here and a little bit there in a stretch. You want to take enough to manage it. So it's once you get a critical mass or critical length of the roadway, then engineering department would work with the county for the transfer.
Very good. Okay, let's make sure any other questions. All right, well, let's open this public hearing. And Ms. Linder, do we have anyone to testify on?
No, Mayor, there's been no request to speak.
Okay. Okay. And, if there's no one to testify, we'll close the public hearing. And I'll ask a member of the council if they'd like to make a motion.
Move to enact ordinance 2857.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, Ms. Linder, please call the roll.
Mayor Buck,
Yes?
Councilors Rapp,
Yes.
Mbu,
Yes.
Mans,
Yes.
Nguyen,
Yes.
Wendland,
Yes.
and verdict.
Yes.
Motion
All right,
passes
this-
7-0.
This is a tentative decision, and a final decision will be made upon adoption of the written findings and adoption of ordinance on January the 19th at 3 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Boone. And Mr. Espy, I guess we're gonna have one more item, then we'll see you again shortly. Moving on to item 7.4, ordinance 2861, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lake Oswego vacating a portion of a public pedestrian access easement located between 1677 and 1688 Leslie Lane. Mr. Boone, will you please review the quasi-judicial hearing procedure with us?
Thank you. This is not a land use one, so it's a little shorter. This request involves the application of the criteria and standards which are listed in the staff report, which is available online. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable criteria listed in the staff report or such other criteria you believe apply to the decision. Please identify to the council the criteria standards you're addressing so the council may consider that testimony in relation to the criteria or standards. If the applicant raised constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the city council to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Hearing process is the same as the previous one. There'll be a presentation by staff, then testimony by the applicant, if any, up to 20 minutes, then testimony by others, pro, con, neutral. Individuals will be allowed up to 5 minutes. Groups and neighbor associations allowed up to 10 minutes. Following that would be any rebuttal. Persons may cede time for testimony to others for 10 minutes. And then prior to closing the public hearing, a person who testifies for the city council may request an opportunity to present additional evidence. Excuse me, strike that part. At this point, I would ask the council members to please declare if you've had any ex parte contact, including a site visit, do you have any bias on the application or any financial conflicts of interest? And I guess if any council member has to declare any, and I see Mr. Wendland raising his hand, if you go ahead and declare ex parte, site visit, bias, or financial conflicts of interest.
I have visited the site, but I have no other conflict, just to find out what it's all about.
Any other counselor needs to declare a site visit, bias, financial? I see shaking of heads no. With that then, is there any challenge to the city council members' right to consider the application? Okay. If not, then we'd ask for the staff report, and I believe that's Erica Rooney is going to lead that off as engineering department, city engineer.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors, and congratulations on your new, to all of our new members, and Happy New Year to everyone. Here we go. We'll start off right away with a street vacation. We don't do these very often, but there is a very formal process through ORS that we do follow. So this is all part of it, including this public hearing. As mentioned, I'm Erica Rooney, the city engineer and director of the engineering and water treatment plant operations. With me this evening, you'll see Tom Workman on our Hollywood Squares here. He is our city surveyor, and Tom has done all of the technical work throughout this effort, both to accurately survey the field's situation and to prepare the legal descriptions and council report in accordance with the requirements set up by the Oregon revised statutes. Before you this evening is the public hearing to consider Ordinance 2861, which is vacating a portion of a public pedestrian easement located between 1677 and 1688 Leslie Lane. Excuse me. For context and for those watching in the audience or streaming from home, I want to start with a bit of history to set the stage. And I need to share the screen because, excuse me, I forgot to start that. One moment, please. Okay, hopefully that came up. The blue screen, correct? Okay, thank you. So there we go, item 7.4. Just to, again, put this in context as to where we are and what we're talking about. In the early 2000s, the city approved what was called Belcourt Subdivision, LU 01-0038, which was basically shown here in the right, this area over here, which is now Leslie Lane. With that came the creation of Leslie Lane, or the end of the cul-de-sac, with several home sites. It also included a 15-foot wide public pedestrian easement and some large private conservation easements on several lots. The 15-foot wide easement was in this area. Conservation easements were in the back here. And we're not talking about those today. We're only talking about the public pedestrian easement. While the public easement was dedicated and recorded with the plat, the requirement for a facility to actually be built was conditioned so that it would be built by the HOA in the future when a connection from the west was established. Then in approximately 2017 and 18, the city approved another land use action here in this area on the left-hand side that was associated with LU 17-0086. And a condition of approval for that project was that they had to provide for a public easement and build the connection to the eastern edge of the property. So this connection exists. Was built first, this green dash. So it puts it in context again, Goodall Road here on the left, Noss Road here on the right, and the item in question tonight is this orange component, if you will. And there's more details, of course, in your council packets that are more specific. So again, these were the two major land use cases that created this situation. And what we're doing tonight is specifically focusing on this part here, the yellow, which is the 15-foot wide public pedestrian easement that was granted back in the early 2000s. This Ordinance 2861 is essentially reducing that overall pedestrian pathway easement area down from the original 15 feet to 6 feet in total width. And it does border on both, or it straddles both properties. So it would be 3 feet on either property, returning any unnecessary easement to the adjacent property owners. So I just wanted to provide some quick photos of the situation so that I understand Councilor Wendland was there, but if you haven't been out there, this is kind of a little history of what happened. This was what it looked like before here on the left. So the befores are on the left and the after are on the right. This tree did have to be removed in order to accommodate the connection and also to connect up to the existing little piece of sidewalk that's there. Pedestrian easement, or the pedestrian path, was put in. Moving down or headed west, here we are looking at the east-west section, kind of in the most narrow area between the two homes, right at the beginning of the homes. Then getting far to the far west end and looking back up the hill, and looking east, you can see that this is what it looked like before the pathway was installed and how it looks today with the pathway in and a recently installed fence. And then this is the north-south connection, and we're looking south in this particular photo. It'll connect to the other neighborhood on the west right down here, and we'll be there in a second. Whoops, I went the wrong way, excuse me. Here we are. Before, it was a little bit messy, not very cleanly tied up, and here is this nice new connection. And then looking from the subdivision to the west, looking east at this point, this is the connection point. Recently installed with the land use, and then this new installation here, and it goes behind this fence as well. So tonight, where we are is that, just as a reminder of the previous council actions, and I know that several of you were not here for it, but in December of this past year, council did pass Resolution 20-42, which was to initiate the process to vacate, including the notice of future public hearing. Again, it's all part of the revised statutes 271.130 that we have to follow when doing a city-initiated street or right-of-way vacation process. This evening, you are conducting the required public hearing in accordance with the process. And staff is, of course, recommending the approval of Ordinance 2861 that will vacate a portion of the easement, reducing it from 15 feet in width to a total of 6 feet in width. And I do want to make one clarifying adjustment for the record, is that we on Exhibit 2, we struck out one of the notes and clarified it a little bit to make it more technically correct, still going from 16 feet in width, or 15 feet in width, excuse me, down to 6. But what we were implying is that with this new language, that it's a reduction, not a replacement. So that's a small housekeeping effort, and we would put that note on the Exhibit 2 that you have in your packet. So that's the only minor adjustment we have. Recommend that if approved, that this be made a part of that motion. The alternatives available to you tonight, as mentioned in the council report, are basically to deny the vacation request and leave as a 15-foot wide easement, or approve the proposal to reduce to 6 feet wide total and enacting Ordinance 2861 with the minor modification to Exhibit 2 as recommended. So with that, I am done and have questions. Happy to answer any. And like I mentioned before, Mr. Tom Workman is with us as well if you want to get into the legal discussions. And I will quit sharing, I think, right? Unless we need a photo or a picture.
Thank you, Ms. Rooney. Councilor Rapp?
Yeah, am I able to get a twofer here and have 2 questions for one hand raised?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you put the map back up there, please?
The original first map?
That
one?
Show me. Yes, perfect.
Okay.
So the first question is what is the purpose of the vacating of it and making it narrower? What was the impetus for this reduction?
Right, with the pathway in there, we felt we didn't need the full 15 feet anymore. There are no utilities going through there. Oftentimes we have utilities and pedestrian pathways kind of sharing the same easement area, and we make them fairly large so that we can go back in and reconstruct, particularly you need more space if you have underground utilities. In this case, there are no underground public utilities that need to be accessed in the future, so we can, if you will, get away with a narrower pedestrian easement. And that's not the case to the west. Those are wider because we do have public facilities in there.
So then I would ask, what's the benefit to the city by reducing it, was it like 7 feet, 8 feet, 9 feet, 9 feet? Like, I mean, why not just keep it as is and don't change it? Does it impact anybody? Does it save us money, like time? I don't know.
It's more in that it's not an area that we need, and that it is a bit narrow between those 2 homes. If you've been out there, it's nice to be able to give them back access to that area as opposed to us not using it and sitting fallow.
And then that makes sense. Then my second question, I know it sounds like 3, it's really 2. Do we know if kids use that pathway at all to get to Lake Oswego High School? Like
well,
walking?
we're assuming that they certainly will when high school's back in place. That has been a longstanding interest. The neighborhood association has brought up this connection before. The neighbors have talked about it before in the past. It's been on transportation system plans in the past that this connection be made. So one can probably assume that this will be a very useful connection for pedestrians, particularly for the high school.
Yeah, I would just hope that by reducing it, there's no impact to that travel. That'd be my only concern.
No, it's about a 4-foot wide pedestrian pathway in there with a little bit of extra room on each side.
Thank you.
Ms. Rooney, what did the city pay for the improvement on the pathway? Pay to improve the pathway?
Yes, we contributed to some of the costs for the pathway.
Shared. Thank you. Councillor Nguyen?
Yeah, so are there any ADA accessibility considerations that were part of that pathway? Is that ADA accessible if you were in a wheelchair, or would you be able to use that path?
Because it's an overland facility, we did make sure that it had the proper width. There are some areas that are a little bit steeper, like where the connection is, but we tried to make it as ADA accessible as possible, but it is not a hard surface. It is a soft surface, so it fits more in the category of overland trails than it does like a sidewalk. They aren't the same requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think that is a good question. Councillor Mbu?
Yes, it was my, like Daniel said, I think we should think of that opportunity for ADA.
Didn't hear all of that.
Yeah. No, I say, it should be ADA compliant. So can we make it ADA so that anybody can?
Right. So we applied the ADA requirements for width so that it does meet those requirements for width. And then again, overland trails are different than for sidewalks, and they don't have to have the same slope requirements and things like that. So we did our best to accommodate and stay with the slope of the property. Otherwise, you'd have to, in order to make them, 2%, if you were to build a sidewalk or a ramp facility like that, then you would have walls and things that we could not do here. So we made it as accessible as possible to the maximum extent practicable.
What defines an overland trail?
Well, again, it's on private property, so it's a little bit different than what would be required in a right of way. And so I don't have that in front of me, what defines an overland trail, and I may be using the wrong language for that, but it's more like a park kind of it follows more like the park trail requirements than it does a sidewalk requirement.
So our park trails have different requirements than the sidewalk. Our park trails don't have to be ADA compliant?
We have to provide access in some places, but not in every place. So I tell you what, Erica is working on our ADA transition plan right now. You guys are going to get extensive briefings about ADA, and I'm going to write this question down and we'll bring back to you because we don't walk around with the stats. I will say one of the things I will tell you we've learned from this particular pedestrian connection is the importance of not just requiring something when a subdivision's approved, but actually requiring it to be built. So that you're not 20 years later having to go back and try to retrofit an existing neighborhood with a system or with a facility that should have been there from the very beginning. And the neighbors have been great too. So,
Councillor Windland.
Yeah, I just want to add that in working with the homeowners and City Manager Bennett on this when it came up, this is a perfect example of doing the right work up front. And I'm not bashing the previous councils who approved this or the development code and all that kind of thing that happened, but this was a dangling participle that was not corrected when it should have been, and the path should have been put in when the development was put in, and if it was going to be ADA compliant, then it should have been on Lake Oswego land versus private ownership. And there was things that were not very clean and tidy when they did this subdivision. And so this is a perfect example of us doing our homework, making sure that we do everything correctly, so that 20 years later, literally, two homeowners who had no idea, they're second or third homeowners, that this problem existed, and they had to write checks, the city had to write checks, and it's in inflated dollars. So I think this is just a great lesson for us to do our homework up front and make sure that we do things right so that it prevents future, what I would call stumbling blocks for us in the future for both our citizens and us have to deal with it. So I think we spent almost 10 times the amount of time that it would have taken for them if they just did the pre-planning part correctly and did it. We've been doing this now, for 6 or 9 months now. But I will say, Director Rooney, the path looks great. The before and after pictures look fabulous. And I think that you did a great job in getting them. And this is going to be a great access point for our high schoolers to get, and junior high kids to get from kind of that area through the path and up to the high school and the junior high. So kudos. And they are going back to school. So we're ready. So.
Councillor Mans?
Yes, I think we had discussed this before. There are not a large number, but a small number of these sort of interesting situations throughout Lake Oswego, especially in these HOAs or in these subdivisions that were built probably between the 80s and the 2000s, I think would be a reasonable estimation. Will part of your work on ADA compliance be looking at some of these pathways or strange little things that we will need to bring up to compliance, or is that an entirely different subject altogether?
It's a great question. We are getting, the main focus is on the public facilities. So you're right. There's kind of a hodgepodge out there of what's a public facility and what's in the public right of way and what's an easement, or is it a private easement? And we're getting our first blush of information back, which is focusing on public right of way. So the road next to it, the sidewalks, those kind of things, and all of our public facilities. I can't answer how far we dug down into pedestrian easements because I don't think we were able to, we don't always have that exact information available, but I will be able to share with you what we do have. And if that's a future layer that we need to address, we certainly will. But it does get kind of complicated. Like, Mountain Park is a ton of private facilities, but the public goes through them. So
Right.
It all depends on how the agreements were made, and the plat and all of that as to who's responsible for them. If it's Mountain Park's responsibility, we would not have that in our plan. That's just an example. Don't quote me that that's the case 100%, but that's an example of a lot of pedestrian facilities that aren't in the right of way, but the public sure does use them.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And I don't expect that you would go that granular on the issue. I was so curious. Thanks a lot.
You bet.
Ms. Rooney, it's that fence, seems to come right up on the gravel path, but there's a little foot on either side.
I'm sorry, I missed the last part. The fence.
Foot in the report says it's 4 feet with a foot on either side.
Yeah, and the pictures are probably a little bit deceptive, but at the end of the day, they're going to have a 6 foot wide.
I see.
Area, and there's a little bit of movement because we were trying to also preserve. If you could see it in one of the pictures, there's quite a nice hedge line along the property to the north. Has that, and we wanted to make sure we preserved as much of that as possible. So there's some shifting that goes around there. Yes.
Well, thank you for the report, and thank you everyone for the good questions. We will open the public hearing on this matter. Ms. Linder, is there anyone who would like to testify?
No, Mayor, there have been no requests.
Okay, easy enough. We will close the public hearing. Would someone like to make a motion?
Move to it. Oh, go ahead.
Move to enact ordinance 2061.
Just Councillor Nguyen will include that minor amendment to Exhibit 2.
Right. I guess accept the friendly amendment, right?
And is that a second?
Friendly second. Oh, Hassan? Messine? Sorry.
Second. Okay. Wonderful. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Linder, please call the roll.
Mayor Buck,
Yes.
Councilors Rapp,
Yes.
Mbu,
Yes.
Mans,
Yes.
Nguyen,
Yes.
Wendland,
Yes.
and verdict.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0.
Thank you, Mr. Workman, for your work on this.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, is everyone okay to keep going until we get to executive session? Okay. Okay, we'll move to council business. We'll welcome back Mr. Espy, talk about Ordinance 2859 and Ordinance annexing to the City of Lake Oswego 5110 Carman Drive. Mr. Espy, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm not sure if Mr. Boone or Attorney Boone needs to say anything as a preamble to this.
You've covered the distinction on why these two coming up here are expedited, and therefore they're not a public hearing for public testimony. So it's up to the council to hear the facts and determine whether they meet the criteria, and then decide to approve or not.
Thank you so much. Okay, so let me go. Okay. So this annexation is owner initiated and will result in the addition of approximately 0.42 acres of residential land to the city. And the subject property is currently under Clackamas County's jurisdiction and zoned low density residential. It's designated R7.5 low density residential on the City of Lake Oswego comprehensive plan map, and will be zoned R7.5 upon annexation. Sewer and water. The sanitary sewer service is available from the City of Lake Oswego 8-inch collection line in Carman Drive. It's approximately 30 feet north of the edge of Carman Drive. As you can see, designated by the green line in Carman Drive, it kind of veers away from there. And they'll need to connect to that. And a partition of the property would require that each parcel connect individually to that particular line. Water is available from a 16-inch Lake Grove Water District line in Carman Drive along the site frontage, and the property would also remain as a Lake Grove Water District customer upon annexation. And for 19064 Benfield Avenue, this annexation is also owner initiated and will result in the addition of approximately 0.25 acres to the city. And it is currently under Clackamas County's jurisdiction, zoned low density residential, and is designated R10 on the city's comprehensive plan, and will be zoned R10 upon annexation. Sanitary sewer is available from a City of Lake Oswego collection line along the property frontage, approximately 8 inches. And it is also a part of a zone of benefit, requiring a zone charge to be paid. They will pay their fair share of the installation of that sewer line in Benfield Avenue as a condition for connecting to the public system. And of course, upon connection to that collection line, the existing septic tank would need to be decommissioned per DEQ standards. Water is available from a 6-inch River Grove Water District line in Benfield Avenue, and would also remain as a River Grove Water District customer upon annexation. And again, staff finds that these properties are within the urban services boundary. Future sewer has been anticipated and planned in the city sewer master plan, and future roadway improvements will be prioritized and funded through the city's pavement management inventory. Staff finds that the annexation is timely with regards to the public facilities and recommends approval for these two annexations. I'm open for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Espy. Can you give us a brief, we don't see it too often, the zone of benefit. Can you give us a brief summary of what the zone of benefit is and how it came about?
Sure. My colleagues in engineering would probably give you a much better idea of what it is, but we designate an area, a servable area for an area where sewer is going to be constructed. And very simply, when the sewer gets constructed, everybody that would benefit from that sewer would pay their concomitant share of that sewer upon connection.
And so did this sewer construction come about because of the annexation of these adjacent properties? And
I believe that this construction of this sewer came about because of the need for the River Grove Elementary School for sewer. And so they extended sewer over to Pilkington and then also extended sewer down Benfield Avenue. It was one of the last of the public projects for the construction of sewer. We haven't done one in quite some time. And in general, what happens is that there will be one private property owner that will volunteer to construct the sewer, and then they would file for a zone of benefit to develop or set up a zone of benefit with the city, and everybody would pay that private developer their fair share for connecting to the system individually.
I would just add that pursuant to LSC 4004080, this was a special zone of benefit for the River Grove extension in order to reimburse the city for the construction of a line that went through the elementary school and then along Benfield. And so that's its,
yeah,
it had a special zone of benefit there to the city.
What is the cost each person pays?
I am not sure of that, but in general, usually the cost adds anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000 to the cost of connecting to sewer, depending upon how much sewer has been constructed. I'm not sure exactly how much the share cost for each of this sewer is individually.
If, excuse me, if I may, I may be able to step in and answer a couple questions about that. Each year, we recalculate the zone of benefit for this particular zone, the connection cost for this particular zone of benefit, because it is one that was initiated by the city. So the city is the one who gets reimbursed for this. I believe right now that the costs for those connection fees are running, I don't have time to look them up, but anywhere from $16,000 to $18,000 a piece.
It is recalculated just based on inflation?
Yes, every year we increase it along with our master fees and charges. So it goes up by a construction cost indexed, which is used for a lot of our fee increases. This is a 20-year-old zone of benefit. So we forked over the money initially, the city initially did. And so it's reimbursed as people connect, and it goes up annually until such time as people have connected.
Oh. Thank you.
Thanks, Erica.
Questions? I don't see any questions. Okay. Well, no public hearing on this. So if a member of the council would like to make a motion, we'll entertain one. And are we, Mr. Boone, can we enact both of these in one fell swoop here?
Well, I should vote on them, I think, separately.
Okay, we'll take a motion. Would someone like to make on 2859?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Ms. Linder, please call the roll.
Mayor Buck,
Yes.
Councilors Rapp,
Yes.
Mbu,
Yes.
Mans,
Yes.
Nguyen,
Yes.
Wenlin,
Yes.
and Burdick.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Move to enact ordinance 2860.
Second.
Any discussion? Linder, please call the roll again.
Mayor Buck,
Yes.
Councilors Rapp,
Yes.
Mbu,
Yes.
Mans,
Yes.
Nguyen,
Yes.
Wenlin,
Yes.
and Burdick.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
We welcome these new neighbors to the city of Lake Oswego. And now moving on to the consent agenda, we have resolution 20 TAC 41 approving appointments to the Budget Committee, Historic Resource Advisory Board, and the Sustainability Advisory Board. We have resolution 21 TAC 01, which is our 2021 Council Liaison and Committee appointments. And we have the approval of a council meeting minutes for November 3rd, November 17th, and December 1st. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda? Councilor Mans?
Yes, move to adopt resolution 20-41.
We're going to do the whole agenda.
Consent
Oh, I'm sorry, move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Can I wait?
All please call the roll.
Mayor Buck,
Yes.
Councilors Raff,
Yes.
Mbu,
Yes.
Mans,
Yes.
Nguyen,
Yes.
Wendland,
Yes.
and Burdick.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 7-0.
Great.
Boy, we're unanimous all the way through. Congratulations.
I'm sure it'll stay that way for the next 4 years.
Oh,
Is there anyone, any member of the council who'd like to pass any information, make any announcements? Any reports from officers, Ms. Bennett?
I have a couple small things. First of all, I just want to congratulate you not only for coming to join the council, but for being probably the first and probably the last Lake Oswego City Council inaugurated over Zoom. So I've been trying to think about the silver lining, and the silver lining is you made history tonight. There we go. All right, here's the more serious thing. I think some of you have gotten some information about some regulations that are being considered by the state's Marine Board around wakes in the Willamette River. If you haven't, you should have. The state's proposing some regulations that would prohibit wakes essentially from the Selwood Bridge north, which means guess where people who want to water ski are going to go. So the city's park staff have prepared comments in the past that weren't considered earlier in the rulemaking, and they're in the process of developing a letter. It's due on the 18th, which is actually the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, and it's before your next meeting. I'll circulate it to all of you, and then I'll call you all to see if you guys want to sign it or if you're comfortable letting the Parks Director sign it. But I do want you to know that we're very concerned because we already have significant threats to our existing Willamette River users because of the amount of waking that happens on the river in front of Lake Oswego, and we think as those users that are currently using the north part of the river move upstream, that's going to get even worse. And in fact, we've got significant property damage every year to our docks and facilities because of the amount of wakes on the river. So that's, I know, not glamorous for your first meeting. And I also want to say, Councilor Rapp, I hope that it's not unanimous every meeting, because otherwise there are 6 too many of you. So
yeah,
let's
it's no fun when we all agree.
Let's go see what we can do together. So welcome on board. We're really glad to have you, and it's going to be great.
Thank you very much. That concludes the public portion of this meeting. We are going to go into executive session now, and I will ask Attorney Boone to read the parameters of the executive session, and then we will take a 10-minute break before we reconvene. Mr. Boone?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Lake Oswego City Council will now meet in executive session for the purpose of conducting deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions and to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection. This executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192-660 2E and F. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the Zoom. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision shall be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, I believe the council intends to adjourn for the evening.
Thank you very much. We'll take a 10-minute recess. We'll start executive session at about 7:25.
And Carrie, are we logging out of this Zoom call and into another one? Yes, we are. All right. We'll see you all in 10.
Thank you.